Welcome to Career Channels, the official podcast of CareerSource North Florida. And now, on to the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Career Channels. We're glad to have you with us. Today, we're starting a 3-part mini-series for job seekers and talking with some of the leadership here at CareerSource North Florida to discuss a few resume tips and tricks. We have Deborah Cohen, Diane Head, Carolina Restamai, and Anthony Jennings with us. So let's go ahead and dive in. Diane, I'm going to start off with you. What are a few major things you look for when you're looking at a resume?
So I look for a lot of stuff in a resume. I want them jam-packed, full of great information. No, not really. I wanted to kind of include in this conversation that my concept of what should be in a resume has changed over time. I'm probably not, and Debbie and Anthony can attest to that I'm not nearly as strict as I used to be on that. But still, anything worth doing is worth doing well, and you want to put your best foot forward and present yourself well to a future employer. But as a group, as a leadership team here at CareerSource North Florida, we're not putting as much stake in the resume as what we used to, because if you apply, you're going to get a phone interview probably. So anyway, that's just food for thought. But so what I look for, because of the level of position I typically hire for and make selections for, is I want to see outcomes and accomplishments versus tasks. I could care less what your job description said. That's not true, but it is, though, because I want to see how you transformed the position and how you made the organization better, not just what your day-to-day tasks were. Obviously, as I'm a stickler for this kind of stuff, grammatically correct. You could probably get some spelling errors by me because I am not the best speller. So to each his own on that, in my opinion. Well formatted. I want it to look nice. A lot of too much white space is too much. It doesn't need graphics. It doesn't need pictures. Doesn't need a border around it, but just pleasing to the eye and easy to read. So that includes your font, what font you choose, what size you choose. But it all should be kind of relative to all the content. If it's much longer than one page, I'm probably going to stop reading. So short, concise, economic use of words, effective use of words. And I prefer a cover letter to explain what's going on in that resume. Why you got given a certain project, or why you were selected to receive an award, or how your past experience transfers into this role, because that tells me that you've actually thought about what this role is, and you've put some thought behind correlating your past experience to this one. So the cover letter really helps highlight those kinds of things. So that's a lot, but I'll stop there for now.
Does anyone else have anything to add to it?
So I know we've talked in the past where a resume is always going to be, it's the main document a job seeker uses. That cover letter, as Diane just said, explains why you should fit with that organization that you're applying to, right? So that same resume, say it's me and I have lots of background, say I have law enforcement background, but I want to come here and work. I need to explain what my law enforcement background is going to do for the position here at CareerSource North Florida, because the resume just says I've done some stuff, right? Now, the thing for me on resumes is if you're say in your resume, a lot of folks like to say I have attention to detail, but then you look at the resume and your name's not capitalized and you do have misspelled words, then there's no attention to detail. And when a hiring manager looks at that, that's kind of a detractor, and it finds its way to the round filing cabinet.
See, some of the resumes we looked at also, they seem like they take time to invest in their resume.
Right.
I mean, a resume should be an investment, over time. It should be never a finished product. It should always be a working process. Where you go back, you look at it, or you have other people look at it. The resumes we've seen have several errors and stuff, that grammatical errors, punctuation. It doesn't cater to the job order, or your resume is not directed to one particular job order. It's just more open, saying, hey, I've had cashier, and then we go into detail on some of the job duties that they had, like Debbie said, that directs towards customer service or something to that nature.
Okay, so speaking on some of those mistakes and errors, what are some of the largest or most common mistakes that you see in resume building when you're looking at them?
I think some of it, Anthony's already hit that, is the investment. Some of our clients, when they come in, they just want to get it done, and it's more than just getting it done. This is the first time an employer is looking at you. It's almost like when you walk through the door, if you're not dressed somewhat professionally, you're making an impression. That resume is your first impression. The cover letter is also the other piece that goes with that, is also helping solidify that first impression. So if you don't submit the cover letter and it's just a resume that just says, here's all the things I've done in the last 20 years, doesn't explain what value that is to the company that you're applying to. What value do you have to the organization that you're trying to get employment with to find that next career? Anyone else?
Sorry, Caroline's going to talk. Please.
No, I was just going to say that when Diane mentioned trying to keep it at, down to a page, a lot of times people may put their whole work history starting from like their very first job, and unless that very first job has to do with the job that they're trying for, or they have a purpose for putting it in there, then you don't have to put all 40 jobs that you've had in your whole life. I mean, if you're going for a retail job, then it might not matter if you were a window washer, unless you're going to be washing windows at the store. So that can cut down on your resume if you just weed out some of those early jobs.
So, two different points to make, and I probably should have written them down, but to your point, I think too much information is too much, and I think one of the disservices we do ourselves is putting years on our resumes, whether it was the year you graduated from college, or the year you got your GED, or the year you became employee of the year, or whatever. It either says you don't. It just tells too much, in my opinion. So I don't put years. I wouldn't even put my address on it. Maybe my email address, but not my geographic location, because that can be discriminated against too, especially if you're trying to relocate. That can become problematic. Debbie mentioned attention to detail, and it made me think about the resumes that we get where someone's applying for a job here at CareerSource for a career development specialist, and but in their objective, which I hate that part of a resume with a passion, but in their objective it says they want to be the very best CNA they can be. But then at the bottom, they don't even list their CNA license, but they list a correctional officer licensing or credential or whatever. So it's like, well, do you want to be a career development specialist, a CNA, or a correctional officer? Which one is it? So I think the drawing the lines and having a clear picture of what you want to do and those attention to detail. If we can't figure it out, don't make us use our imagination, because I can tell you that's probably a pretty dangerous place. But seriously, it makes us think, oh wow, that's not good at all.
Right.
Yeah. It needs to tell the story you want to write, not
Well,
not a random story.
I think your resume showcases your strengths and your abilities, and that's what it should do. It should showcase all those. Diane was talking about accomplishments. So if I said I worked in the military, and I said, okay, I worked in the military and I did this project where I earned $40,000, or we did a thing to get to $40,000, and we were able to launch whatever project we needed to launch. That's indicating that whatever position, if I'm going for a QA position or whatever, then that allows me to showcase what I did in that particular job. And that's part of what getting through the door so that you can. That resume is that, again, that first look, that first impression to walk through the door to get that interview. Anthony, I've also talked about gaps inside of those resumes.
Yeah, I think people don't realize that, that gap, just be prepared to explain it. I mean, if there's a gap in your resume, we understand that things happen, but be able to explain what happened during that time period and kind of how you recovered, or if it was personal, say it was personal, but, that situation has been taken care of or recovered from. And, don't leave it there. Or, we'll take the elephant out the room, I guess.
Well, a lot of times there's things you can put in those gaps. You were doing something during that time. It might not have been a job where you were making money, but if you were volunteering or whatever you were doing, you can probably market it to look like something that would be beneficial to the employer.
And employers do want to know what those gaps are. And I know for us, Anthony's the one who definitely asks why. Why is there a 6-month gap here? Why is there an 18-month gap here? Tell us why. And we find that a lot of folks are a little hesitant to answer because they're not prepared for that question. And sometimes it's, hey, I had to homeschool my kids for 18 months. Cool. All right, how'd that go? And keep on moving.
So, what do you feel like has been the biggest challenge regarding resumes, whether it's from the interviewer standpoint or even looking at someone's resume?
Well, I think we look at resumes, and first of all, we're going to get a telephone interview regardless with us. But we look at resumes to see what information they have down, kind of track what history they've done and how they explain the history and how it can benefit to the organization. Right? So someone comes in or shows their resume, what benefits do they have for the organization? What have they learned in the past that we can utilize and say, hey, this person will be great here. Just because they come in an interview don't mean they're going to always go to a CDS1. Someone came in and had a real great resume, and the resume showed, hey, I could go to the CDS3 right off the bat based on my case management history. As an organization, it's great that we do that and not just say, okay, we're going to put you as a CDS1 because this is where we start at. We let them start at the CDS3 based on their employee history.
I just think, as some other hiring managers said, we've made it our core that whoever submits an application, we're going to do a telephone interview at a minimum. But other employers, so you take your bigger employers out there, your resume, that's it. If they don't like it, you're not getting a phone call. So they're not going to tell you what you're doing wrong or what's missing from your resume unless you ask, and then they still may not tell you. I encourage you to come to us at Career Source North Florida. Let us help you fine-tune that resume for the position that you're looking for.
But that's our advantage is that we're small. We have the ability to follow up with that customer and say, hey, this is what we saw on your resume. Here's how you can improve. Or, hey, let's schedule you some time to meet with someone to do a resume mock interview.
Right.
One-on-one, someone to help you with your resume. And then we even moved to the point where we started doing a resume checklist. So more eyes are on this person's resume when they come through, to be able to help them.
Right. Right. And Employ Florida is one of our better systems that we use, but I think we've all agreed that maybe Google Docs or a Microsoft Word document might be a little bit better to fine-tune that resume.
Yes, it depends on what area of resume you are, right? So if you're starting out and you don't really know computers and stuff and gathering all your data in one central location is great for EF.
Right.
Now that I have it there, okay, now I've outgrown EF. Now it's time for me to go to Google Docs or something else.
Yeah, you can always bring that content over into another software system and format and adjust and shift and cut back and resize and all of that. But yeah.
So, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's looking to improve their resume?
For me, I'm big on format. Diane touched on it. If I see a resume and their first name is lowercase and there's a bunch of random spacing and different fonts and not a it needs to look like they've worked on it and they've actually proofread it. And if you're not good at proofreading, then I'm sure you have a friend or a relative or career source. Just so that it looks like an actual professional document that you would want to give to an employer. Any employer, even if it's not a professional employer, you should still want your resume to be something that you're proud of.
Anything worth doing is worth doing well.
I like that.
If you're going to take the time to do it, make it a thing, and put some effort in to make yourself stand out and to present yourself how you want to be presented, which I think we've all talked about a little bit.
Well, and if it's not a professional job, if it's it could be a construction position, your resume is going to stand out if all the other resumes are poorly formatted. I can guarantee you that whoever's getting those resumes in HR or admin, they're probably going to be like, wow, look at this resume. This looks awesome.
Oh, he knows how to use Word. He knows how to use Adobe. He knows, and truly that there is a assessment value to that. We don't do assessments like we were doing at one time where we were doing writing samples and do you know how to use Word and all the prove it's and that kind of thing of the world. But but there's a lot you can tell from the resume about how they can use computer tools. And there is a new some new courseware and assessments that maybe we can get into it in another podcast, but that helps us skill build for our participants, for our job seekers in that area.
Okay. So, quick recap of everything we've talked about for the job seekers who are looking to improve their resumes would be check your spelling, check your formats, make sure that everything looks the way you want it to. Don't put too much information, but don't leave out too much either. Any final words anyone have for our listeners?
I think with the era of AI and HR departments using different types of software where they're scanning for keywords, make sure your resume is full of keywords that they may be looking for, or else it may not be picked up. Even we have employers who use our system to look for resumes, and they can do that by keyword. So if you did, or if you have a certain license or certification, or if you did a certain worked on with a certain piece of software, then be sure to include that because it's all important. Depending on, any employer could go in and find you that way. But also think about whether, what organization you're submitting your resume to, who you're submitting it to, and whether you're sending it directly to the boss or is it going to be printed by an administrative assistant and handed to the boss? Because an electronic resume can look a lot different than one that gets printed, because things like font size matter once you print it. Whereas electronic, I can make it, I can modify and adjust and read it without my glasses on. Whereas if it's printed and you tried to squeeze 10,000 words onto one page, that's not going to work for me.
So, if you or someone you know is looking for help with their resume, please give us a call at 850-973-9675, or you can click on our website at careersourcenorthflorida.com, and we'll connect you with one of our talented career development specialists to help you get started. Keep an eye out for our next episode where we'll discuss some interview tips and tricks. Thank you all for joining, and remember, you can find your career path here with Career Channels.
You've been listening to Career Channels, the official podcast of CareerSource North Florida. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about CareerSource North Florida and the services they provide, visit CareerSourceNorthFlorida.com. That's CareerSourceNorthFlorida.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.